The time is here. The moment is now. Our time is here. Our moment is now. A red line was just crossed. Now, we've heard for quite a while about how the current regime kidnapped and shipped off Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, to the first operational death camp that the U.S. has run. And I am not being hyperbolic when I say the U.S. is now operating its first death camp in El Salvador. When Kilmar Abrego Garcia was kidnapped and shipped off to the Salvadorian death camp, that was the first line that was crossed. This was a person that was here legally and had the protection of the United States. And even after the DOJ admitted they made a mistake in kidnapping and shipping him off to a death camp, the Trump regime has refused to bring him back to the U.S. The Supreme Court has stepped in and ruled unanimously that the Trump regime needs to bring him back, and Trump refused. The Trump regime met with Salvadorian President Na Belli, and it's interesting to watch the interaction between Trump and Bukele. You remember how Trump dressed down Volodymyr Zelensky when he was in the Oval Office for not wearing a suit? What did this Salvadorian thug show up in the White House? He wasn't wearing a suit either. And in typical Trump fashion, Trump kissed the ass of a dictator while crapping all over our allies all around the globe. But that's not where the red line was crossed. The red line was crossed when Trump was asked whether he was going to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, and he said that's not something I can do because that would be violating El Salvador's sovereignty. When the Salvadorian terrorist president was asked if he was going to return Abrego Garcia, he said, how am I going to sneak a terrorist back into the U.S.? And after that meeting, Trump and Bukele were caught on a mic talking about how Bukele, under Trump's orders, needs to build 5 or 6 more prisons because we have a lot of citizens that we need to ship over there. That's the red line. He ran on deporting quote-unquote criminal illegal aliens. And so far, this regime has disappeared 4,000 people, the vast majority of them with no criminal record, into the death camp that we are co-signed under. And now, when Trump has said that he is not going to facilitate the return of a legal resident of the United States, he's not going to obey the Supreme Court's order, and he's actually going to escalate this by shipping off citizens to this death camp, he just co-signed everyone in his administration to war crimes. That's the red line that was just crossed. There is no doubt that this administration is planning a repeat of 1930s Germany. It is clear as day, and the time is come and the moment is here for all of us to take note of what's happening and make sure that we do whatever we can, however we can, to make sure it doesn't come to pass. And it starts with this. Our elected officials need to be more afraid of us from a legal perspective, from the bounds of a law perspective, than they are of Trump. The Republicans elected in Congress have shown nothing but cowardice because they are afraid. They're feckless, they're spineless, they're brainless, and they're heartless. And a certain percentage of them absolutely agree with the fascist dictator that is currently in charge. We need to reverse that trend. From today going forward, every moment we can, we need to make sure that these Republican cowards need to understand who they work for, and they need to understand the consequences of not supporting and defending the Constitution. They are derelict in their core duties in holding this rogue regime accountable for their actions. That is the first step. The second step happens with mass protests. We need a show of force, and a peaceful show of force, with the understanding that MAGA infiltrators will try to instigate riots at these protests that we're going to be participating in. And this has got to be led by the majority population up front, and you have to make everyone feel uncomfortable with the numbers that you bring to the forefront. It is a completely different ballgame. We're not talking about theory and potential. This is an active speed run into a Nazi dictatorship. That is what's going on. And for those of you who think that this is an overreaction, understand the transition that we've gone through. Criminal illegal aliens to illegal migrants to legal residents who don't say the right thing, and now we're at citizens. How much longer before he's coming after you? How much longer before he's disappearing your friends and family off the streets? This is the moment. The time is now. And we need to make sure that the people in charge, the people that are elected and put into power to defend the Constitution, understand who they work for. This is a 5-alarm fire. This is a high red alert. And for those who are still interested in the principles of democracy, the principles of this republic, it's time for you to get off the couch. All of you don't tread on me people, all of you Second Amendment people, all of you patriots, where are you? You've got to be at the front lines as well. Because if we fail in meeting the moment, the future is going to be built on a mountain of our neighbors and friends' skulls. Understand the stakes that we're facing. And the lesson that every Republican needs to understand, that every business leader who supports this regime needs to understand, you too are going to be held accountable. You too are going to be part of that war criminal crowd. There is no escape from what is coming if you follow through with this. Because understand what you're doing. You're openly signing off and co-signing on the rounding up of U.S. citizens and legal residents without due process and sending them off to death camps. And for that, you need the most dire of consequences that you are eligible for. Those are the stakes here when we think about the red line that has just been crossed.